The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report, and guess what? We've got your favorite Jewish philosopher on again. It's David Hartman. This is the fourth David Hartman tape, and I can tell all of you, most of you know it already, that whenever David Hartman appears on our show, we sell more tapes of that show than any other tape we've ever had. And we've had all luminaries on my show, and I must confess that David Hartman, Rabbi Hartman, or Dr. Hartman, really, he breaks the bank. David, welcome to another Hartman Charney tape.
Oh, wonderful.
It's fun, but it's very important. People get a lot of hope out of you. And I was just talking with your son, and your son said to me, you know, one of the problems in Israel today is that a lot of people don't feel there's hope. I was talking to my crew today, and my crew says the present is very good. My cameraman says the present is very good, but he doesn't know what the future will be. It seems to me it's very tough if you don't have leadership that proposes some kind of hope to the people. Is your son correct, by the way?
Well, I would say it's not just that the leadership doesn't project hope. The condition of the society seems paralyzed. In other words, you look at the issue with the Palestinians, you don't know how that's going to turn out. You really don't have confidence in the future how that's going to be resolved. I mean, even with the territorial compromise, I mean, what type of peace will there be? Is the long-standing hate that has existed between both peoples capable of being healed? Because peace is not just a treaty, it means people, and it's attitudes and trust. And can we build that? Will that come? So that needs a leadership that could develop. You see, our Prime Minister will, hopefully, make a deal with Arafat. And Arafat and him, through the help of the United States, will come to some modus vivendi. But then the issue, are they going to create a climate of people wanting to trust each other? In other words, leadership has to, in some way, project and create a political climate where people are willing to forget the memories of suffering and look to something new. You can't only live off the pains of the past. And there's been a lot of pains on both sides. And as a result of that, it's hard to know if there's going to be a serious rebirth of trust. And that they're not creating. See, they don't generate that climate. They haven't created a climate of peace. They've been negotiating. Sometimes you can have a negotiation like the operation is successful, but the patient died. Right. So in other words, the idea is simply you have to negotiate in a way which creates a climate of people wanting to live with each other. That they haven't done. They haven't created a climate of peace.
I celebrated with President Jimmy Carter 2 weeks ago in Atlanta, Georgia, the 20th anniversary of the Accords. And we were talking about the difference between the Oslo negotiations and the Camp David Accords. And basically, it was the people and the leadership. Menachem Begin and Sadat. You had two eminent, and then the satellite people were Moshe Dayan and Asa Weitzman and El Baz on the other side. It was a true negotiation. I gave a major speech in the United States on Rosh Hashanah, and I came to the same conclusion, that the whole thing, the whole negotiation, the finalization can be terrific on paper, but if they walk around the street and say, do you trust the Arabs? And if the answer is no, and you don't want it to be yes, then it's a forlorn thing.
Absolutely.
Now, you're an Orthodox rabbi, and you represent a clique of orthodoxy. The National Religious Party today says that if Netanyahu goes forward and signs an agreement, they will leave the government. On the other hand, I get a call secretly on the cell phone, which everybody has, from a high political person in the National Religious Party, says it's a bluff. We're just talking like that. We're not leaving the government. you think I would have a lot of respect now for the National Religious Party?
Well, they have done many things in the past that would have taken away their respect anyway. I mean, I think the National Religious Party has made some very, very profound errors in this society. In other words, they focused exclusively on land as the new expression of religious idealism.
Instead of people.
Instead of people. Again, we run away from the most important issue. We think land, planes, and forget that people is what makes life. And that's the most difficult thing to change and to affect. How do you affect people? How do you create children? How do you create a family? How do you create a home where people can grow? How do you create a society where people feel a sense that no one's out to get me? You know, if you smile at him, you don't say, well, what do you want really from me? You know, I mean, in other words, how do you create a climate where people open their hearts and souls to each other in a feeling of trust and are not frightened to be spontaneous and gentle?
Can you do that?
But I think a society has to create an ethos of what a decent human life is about, and create a political structure where even the political framework mirrors a finer feature of what human beings could be. And the problem is that the political structure, our visible leaders, do not project images of decency and images of type of human relations which you'd like to emulate.
So the fact that Netanyahu may sign this deal, if he does it with a cold hand and a cold shoulder, means that the efficacy of this deal will really not have much...
Well, it's not just how he signs the deal. The question...
The fulfillment.
The way the whole thing, the whole process...
The atmosphere.
The atmosphere of the whole process of squeezing, and this one, how much you can do, 6, 2, 3, and then each one, you know, squeezing each other like a bazaar market, you know?
So you go to the document, you sign it angrily and say, I'm not going to do anything more, this is it.
Yeah, then you don't even know after they sign it. Then it'll say, well, okay, I did 6% and they didn't honor their agreement. You don't know if there's a real desire to create a different society. And,
Right.
and the question is not Bibi. The issue is, does Arafat and the Palestinian people want a new society? That's same issue there.
Same issue there.
You know what I mean? And do they want to create a society where they can live with Jews in dignity?
Do you meet with the philosophers from the Palestinian
Well, I
Authority?
used to meet with Sari Nusseibeh, but the point is that it's not a question of meeting. You see, the whole...
Does he express the same problem?
I mean, they have to face a serious issue. Does Islam and its religious leadership, its rabbis, its qadis, and all its preachers in the mosques and the sermons, are they creating a climate of love and trust? Are they creating a respect for the other? Or are they still giving the sense that these are the infidels who are dangerous?
My guess is no. My guess is they're not creating that.
So the sermons haven't changed.
No.
And the schools haven't changed. And teachers haven't changed. And therefore the milk that children drink is the same. And now you can't build peace with that.
How do you filter that into a society?
Well, that's where the leadership, the religious leadership, the political leadership have to in some way...
On both sides.
Both sides have to break through with a new thinking and another spirit. And it's not an easy thing to achieve.
All right, you're an Orthodox rabbi. You were ordained through Yeshiva University. You had pulpits in Orthodox communities. The religious parties that say that land is more important than people, is that a religious doctrine?
No, I think that's anti-religious in its deepest level. The most important value in Judaism is the sacredness of human life. Pikuach nefesh, says the Talmud, saving a human life pushes away everything. Yom Kippur, Shabbos, anything. There's nothing that stands before the sacredness of a human being. To save one life, says the Mishnah, is as if you save a whole world. The significance of one human being. Now, the dignity and sacredness of human life is not what's being communicated by religious leadership.
It's funny you should say that. Years ago, I worked in the Senate, and I was very involved in saving Russian Jews. And ultimately, I was there on a Rosh Hashanah, and usually I didn't travel on Rosh Hashanah, but I had to travel. And I try to ask rabbinical blessings, and boy, did I get smacked on this one. And I said, well, it's pikuach nefesh. If you save a life, I'm sure you can give up Rosh Hashanah. And, so ultimately, we were successful. But I'm sure there are many, many rabbis who have told me not to do it. Am I correct?
No, I think if they would have told you, they would have acted in opposition to the religious tradition.
So if I would have called you, I'd have gotten...
I would have not only said you're allowed, I would give you a blessing to succeed. In other words, the point is that this is the serious issue. What image does religious life project? What is the image of tradition? Is it ritual obsession, or is it creating a whole total religious personality in which you see the power of religion through the capacity to be gentle, to love, and to be concerned with social justice? Those are not just ethics. That people say, well, that's the reform movement. You know,
right.
You know, they're concerned about ethics, but true Judaism is concerned with how you daven in the morning, what you eat, how you build the sex life. All those are the important things. And what you do is you create this polarization between wearing tefillin or being honest in business. I remember when I was a rabbi, a person said to me, what's better, Rabbi? For me to put on tefillin in the morning and then smuggle diamonds in the airport, or to go ahead and help people? So I said, you know, it's like a new Jewish anti-Semitism. Like, if you put on tefillin, then you have to smuggle diamonds.
Right.
You know, as if it's a necessary condition. So either or, be honest or be religious.
But if you smuggle the diamonds in the tefillin...
Yeah, so I'm just saying, no, what I'm saying is...
Slam dunk.
You know, but what I'm saying is fundamentally, what we do is we create...
You're absolutely right.
We divide. We make this feeling that, what does God want? Ethics or ritual? Ritual is the way a person wants to give dramatic expression to a deep desire for a relationship with God. Now, that's a holy act. Now, but if you want a relationship with God, then you have to want a relationship with all that God created, which means all human beings. So you can't want to say, I love God, but I don't like people. You know, you can't do that. The way to God is through your relationship with people. So you can't polarize between ethics and ritual.
I suggest that's a big problem in Israel today since the Yigal Amir murder.
That's correct. Exactly.
I don't know how you overcome it, but I know that there's many friends have told me that, and who were Orthodox or semi-Orthodox, if they see a person with a yarmulke today, there's immediately, it's like you say with the tefillin, you know, it's a turnoff.
Right.
You're aware of that, obviously.
Yes, tremendously so. I mean, the whole idea, in fact, there were kids after the Yigal Amir thing in our high school who were embarrassed to wear kippot. They would go to an army when they were going to recruitment in the army and they wanted to go into crack units. They took off their kippot because immediately you are, in this society here, you're labeled immediately by the size of your kippah, the color of your kippah. They don't ask you what's your views. David Bar-Ilan, who was then editor of the Jerusalem Post.
Now the media advisor
to Bibi, said, you know, Hartman is the guru of the left. You know, and I said to him, wouldn't it be nice for you to ask what my political views are, you know? But I mean, you know what I think even without having to speak to me. That's an amazing phenomenon. I went to never was in a demonstration. But I mean, why did he say that? Because I had to be left, because Tom Friedman quoted me in the New York Times. So if Tom Friedman is quoting you, he won't quote a person who's not on the left, because you immediately associate Tom Friedman with the left, the enemy of Israel. Hartman speaks to Tom Friedman, so Hartman is that, and therefore Hartman's wife, by being married to Hartman, must be even worse, and his kids must be infected with the same disease. So in other words, you have then, in this society, I've been told, and I spoke very strongly about that, I said a Jewish society is not by how much mezuzahs are on the door and by menorahs. A Jewish society is a society which creates the feeling that tomorrow could be different than yesterday. A Jewish society... Hope. A Jewish society creates the feeling that no matter what I did in the past, I can change. And here, in Israel, it's just the opposite. On the basis of... I remember meeting a professor, and I said to him about a friend of mine who was teaching at Hebrew University. He's written already 12 books. So he said, who's Shitri? He's very shallow. Shallow? I say, he's written 12 books. I said, why does he say he's shallow? I remember him in high school. So I said, what saved me, you know my fame with Bob Cousy, what saved me that I came to this country after I finished playing basketball. Because if I would have been here at 20, I could have never been a Jewish philosopher.
Because they call you a basketball player.
I'm a basketball player, that's all. I'm pretty labeled already. You know, I mean, so as a result of even the gone, the kindergarten you went to or the youth movement you've gone to, they label you for the rest of you. That's why many people leave the country, because you're choked. You feel there's no room.
You're so right. There was a man who a great general in Israeli society, who was lobbying me because of my relationship with Ezer Weizmann at that time for defense minister to become the deputy chief of staff. And I went in and talked to Ezer in a nice way, not that I could lobby him. It just, I brought up the topic. He said to me, Dayan told me he's not a bright guy. That was the end of this guy's career. And he's one of the big heroes of Israel. The guy was wiped out totally, pre-labeled.
Always. I mean, and also...
So what is that, indigenous to this society here?
No, it's a society with a lot of ambition and not a lot of room. So there's a feeling that if you get ahead, it's closed. You see, in America, there's room. There's room. It's expansive. I mean, if you're good in medicine, so if they're closed in Columbia Presbyterian, they're open another in Yale. So Yale, so there's Harvard. Harvard, there's Stanford. So there's a whole level of range of opportunities. Here, Hebrew University, Hadassah Medical School, whoever gets it there on top, and then the bottle gets narrow and narrow on the top. And therefore, if you get ahead, you're taken away from me. You're happy? So people are frightened to say they're happy.
They don't fagin in this country.
No, that's nicht faginnen. That's right.
Faginnen means to, how do you say that in English? To rejoice with somebody else's...
someone else's successes.
Right.
I always say that it's easier to go to someone's funeral. It's more difficult to sing at his wedding. So...
We got to cut for a break. We'll come right back with the words of wisdom of David Hartman, great philosopher, maybe one of the best in the world. And we'll see if he can create some vitamin pills of hope to give at least to the politicians here. Because without that, it's a tough period right now in this country. We'll be right back.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high. To have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Get the book that inspired the award-winning movie, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the Backdoor Channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels.
Anywhere else, this would just be a museum. But this is Jerusalem, and these are the Dead Sea Scrolls, the oldest known biblical text and greatest archaeological find of modern times. And now they're in New York. See the Dead Sea Scrolls, Life and Faith in Biblical Times at Discovery Times Square on 44th Street. The wonders of Israel live in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
We're back. We're speaking to David Hartman. He's a rabbi, he's a philosopher, he's a doctor. He just finished the Terry Lectures at Yale, which is a very, it's highly prominent. What did you talk about at Yale, David?
The struggle for the soul of Israel.
That's an easy topic.
Yes, no, it was divided into 3 lectures. One was Maimonides and Halevi as different responses to history and to the God of history. And the second lecture was the Bible and the Talmud, 2 different directions towards making sense of God and history. And the third was my response to the rebirth of Israel today. How can I give a religious response to Israel? You know, because I once had a professor, Professor Simon, Buba's great student, said to me, how can I celebrate Independence Day and offer prayers of thanksgiving to God without first coming to terms with what happened in the Holocaust? I mean, how can I be thankful for the rebirth of Israel without first explaining what went wrong at the Holocaust? And my own view, which I've thought about for 25 years, is that when I celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, I'm not making a theological judgment how God acts in history. What I'm doing is saying that this event in history enables me to generate a new hope within Judaism. In other words, events are holy or significant religiously if they set into motion potentialities for new spiritual renewals. In other words, it's not, I can't figure out what God does in history or how God acts in history. I have no computer or no picture in which I'm able to judge. But what I can judge is, do these events open up new opportunities? And for me, the rebirth of Israel created very important religious possibilities. It healed what I call the danger of liberal individualism, in which people were only caught into their own selves. It restored the centrality of nation. It gave back historical memory to Jews. It made them feeling that they're part of a larger family, which is essential for being a Jew, because Judaism is not what you do in your loneliness, it's what you do within the family. It's a collective drama. And therefore, if Israel is a catalyst to creating a national consciousness, the sense that I'm part of a nation, then it has profound religious meaning.
Is Judaism a religion of equality for all its people?
But I would say the central principle of beloved is each human being created in the image of God.
All right. How do you attack or define the role of the Kohen in Jewish society?
Well, I would say today, or at one time.
At one time. Weren't they egalitarians?
Well, I would say the Kohen, in my shul when I was a rabbi, I was very happy when Peter the tailor was the one who got up. It was the Kohen, and he was the one who blessed the congregation, not me. In other words, it was an anti-clerical view.
Right.
In other words, at one time, at some sense, a difference.
No,
now,
today,
I love the idea that lay people bless people, and they don't bless them. They are the carriers of a blessing. It's a tradition that gave them the right to be the carrier of a blessing that God wants to give.
But years ago, the Kohen was sort of the prince of society.
Well, it was a stratified society. I mean, he had a certain role in the temple, and therefore.
By the way, who chose the Kohen Gadol? How was he chosen? Was it from Aaron and descent?
Yeah, descent.
The descent of Aaron.
Right.
I asked this about 20 people in the synagogue, all singing there, chuckling. Nobody knew the answer except me, so I was pretty proud. I just want to confirm it.
Okay,
you know?
no, absolutely. And the point is that sometimes the high priest was a political appointment, which was dangerous.
But wasn't the whole thing between Moses and Aaron a little bit political? The brother, Moses couldn't speak, right? Too well. So Moses appointed his brother who could speak better, Aaron. So it was nepotism, wasn't it?
No, it's not nepotism, but God was in some way advised him to choose Aaron. In other words, but the point is that Moses was a stutterer, and I always explained why he was a stutterer. He wasn't a smoothie. Moses was a person who felt much more than he could say, and therefore language was not adequate to contain all his convictions. You see Moses' capacity when he was leading the people, and he
so he was so overwhelmed,
overpowered by his sense of emotion and identification. That was my. In my early years, when I used to give good rabbinic sermons.
You think Rabbi Soloveitchik would agree with that? You don't know.
I don't know, but I hope he would find it interesting. That's the most important thing about an idea, is not only if you agree with it, if you feel it's interesting to argue with. I once said one of the great problems of modern orthodoxy is they don't even want to make an imaginative mistake. You know, I mean, I think ideas are important if they generate discussion and possibilities.
All right, I'll give you another time bomb. I was talking to one of the, you know who it is, and I don't want to say it on television, one of the most prominent leaders in Israeli society today, who said to me that the Jewish people are self-destructive.
Well, I don't know how prominent he is, but I mean, I think most human beings are self-destructive.
Right.
It's not a. It's not.
Well, he says, you know, the temples were destroyed, and he was talking about now. We have the opportunity of peace. There is an opportunity of peace, and he's afraid that the people here in the leadership here may destroy that. And he says it's consonant with the history of the Jewish people.
Well, I would say there's a lot of things which are consonant with the Jewish people. The Jewish people also were people who created prophets and teachers, who in some way showed how you can live in an imperfect society. I mean, I love the rabbis of the Talmud when they teach us how to build decency in an imperfect world, where they teach us that we don't have to have it all in order to be able to do something. There's a beautiful midrash which says, why does God show favoritism to Israel? So they says, God answers, the angels ask God, you're not supposed to show favoritism. You know, it's not just. He says, how can I not be in love with Israel? I wrote in the Bible, you should eat and be satisfied and bless the Lord. So in other words, only require that they say grace after they've eaten a full meal. And they are willing to say grace after eating a kazayit or kibetza, even eating food, a small meal. So I said, what does that mean? A person who can say grace when he's still hungry is what the rabbis taught us. Now, I argued once with Hanan Parat, if I don't have all the land, I have nothing. I said, Rabbinic Judaism taught us.
Parat is from the National Resistance Party?
Yeah. I said to him, Rabbinic Judaism taught us to say grace even if you're hungry. In other words, if you eat a little bit, it's also to feel it's important.
So what did he say?
So I mean, what do you say?
What was his answer?
His answer is, how can I give back any part of the land? It's like cutting God's body. So what am I going to say if someone sees the land as God's body? I can't argue with that.
Is it their theory, I mean, these people, that you should sacrifice human life to keep this land?
No, they also agree with the sacredness of human life, but they feel that the land was meant historically and theologically to be under the sovereignty of God's elect people. And therefore to give up the land is to violate the intimate covenant between God and Israel.
And do you think that it's theological to keep land?
I think it's theologically mistaken, because I think what God wants on this land is not that Jews should have sovereignty, but to build a just society. And therefore what we do with people is what God is interested, not that we show political sovereignty. That I control the map doesn't mean anything. It's what do I do on the streets of Tel Aviv? What do I do in the hospitals? How do I treat human beings in the street? How do I create confidence among the poor? How do I create homes that people would feel that they want to sing in it? You see, that's the holiness of the land. And therefore, the violation of my intimate relationship with God is you shall be holy. That's what God wants. Be just. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdaf. Pursue justice. Love the stranger. Deal honestly with people. I mean, it's what image of God you have.
Right. So these people study the same books that you do. What brings them into this narrow conviction?
But
I mean, that's
see,
a big problem.
Yeah, but I see the same books don't give the same message. The book is read by the eyes you bring to it.
Right.
And therefore, you can't expect that the Bible or the Torah will speak in one voice. It does never spoke in one voice. And the question is, who listens to it? There's a multiple music in the Bible. Now, you can select one thing and be deaf to other musics. No, the Bible could allow you many, many things. It could allow immoralities, it could allow viciousness, and it could allow great gentleness. That depends how you want to read this. With what eyes do you bring to this tradition? That's why I just wrote a book on the whole importance of it. A heart of many rooms. Make yourself a heart of many rooms. That's the name of the title.
Is it coming out?
It's going to come out in January from Jewish Lights in Vermont.
I know that.
It's a very important book. And why did I call it Make a Heart of Many Rooms?
Yeah.
Because there's a very beautiful story in the Talmud, in the Tosefta. A person says, how can I study Torah now? How can I study Judaism? This one says it's permitted. This one says it's not permitted. This one says I should give back land. This one says I shouldn't give back land. This one says it's kosher. This one says it's not kosher. You go on an El Al plane and they ask you, do you want real kosher or make-believe kosher? Or that? So I always say, no, I want the make-believe kosher. I want the kosher that all the Jews eat at. Because I have to have, something I don't eat. So I don't eat real kosher. So real kosher, I leave it. So this one says that you're allowed, this one says you're not allowed. What's going on? He says, how can I study Torah? There's such disagreements. This one says it's permitted, it's not permitted. So the Talmud says, make yourself a heart of many rooms and take the views of those who say that it's permitted and put it in, and those who say it's not permitted, those who say it's kosher, those who say it's treif, put it in. In other words, your heart should contain conflicting opinions. In other words, give up the notion that there's only one truth or one way to explain, one way to interpret. Develop a soul that can respect differences, that can live with multiple voices.
Multifarious and dimensional.
Multi-voices. I mean, because many people think that only through dogmatism do you develop conviction. You have to blind your eyes, not listen to any different opinion, and only then will you have sincerity.
But David, isn't that the concept of a chassid with his Rebbe? The Rebbe sort of tells you what direction to go, and you go?
Well, you should know I have a Hasidic soul, but a Lithuanian mind. And my teachers were Lithuanian. In other words, I believe that if you give up your independence and your freedom of critical judgment, you've given up your soul. I think the beginning of the decadence of human beings is to go to Big Brother and say, decide my life for me, put me in the right direction, and not have your own...
You don't have to think.
You don't have to think. And if you give up your critical faculties of reason and reflection and argument, then it's idolatry.
It's terrible.
Then it's idolatry. In other words, any government or any religious leader who's above criticism is above being a religious or political leader. That's idolatry. That's paganism. The critical mind, that's why the Talmud was so important. This one said this thing, this one had this opinion. They argued with each other. There were multiple voices in the tradition. Even in the Bible, you take the book of Ecclesiastes, which says life is futile and empty. And then you read that together with the book of Micah, who speaks about messianism and a vision of hope. So you have multiple voices, and that's what made it beautiful. Because you never know which voice will speak at what time. Different times of history, you need different voices. And what's happening today, what's killing Judaism today, is we're squeezing all of this rich, complex, multi-layered tradition into one voice. Only one group is authentic. Only one group reveals the truth. Only my view is the only one.
So it's secularization.
Secularization is, I would say,
each one is interested in his own group. Ruby Rivlin, the Knesset member, turned up secularization. I'm not sure that's the right term. Anyway, we got a cut for a break. We'll come right back and hear some more words of wisdom from David Hartman.
Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or audible.com.
Anywhere else, this would just be a desert. But here are some of the wonders of Israel. The fortress Masada, the Dead Sea, the Negev in bloom, the Ramon crater. The wonders of Israel live in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at audible.com or on iTunes. Discover the mystery of the Kaddish.
We're with David Hartman, and if you haven't, you probably should try and find the first 3 tapes we did. They're terrific. And many of you have taken these tapes into your own home, and I don't blame you. They're terrific tapes, not so much from what I'm saying, but because David Hartman is a brilliant philosopher. By the way, his father thought he would never make it, so I remember the story. He said, hair will grow on my palm before David becomes a great man. Correct, right?
Not
David?
a great man, even a student, you know. They used to tell my mother, take him out of school and teach him to become a plumber, at least something, you know, maybe something will turn out from him.
What's your read on... A lot of Orthodox Jews are trying to be competitive with the next Orthodox Jew. Well, you see a guy in glatt kosher or a woman in glatt kosher, then they don't know what to do. And a lot of Americans, by the way, have sent their kids here. They send them here with knitted yarmulkes, and you tell me there's all degrees of yarmulkes. They come back with black hats and sits us outside. They're terrorized. There's a lot of terror going on in America.
No, what happened, Leon, is something very profound, I think. People identify spiritual growth by quantification. You see, when you say to someone, have you grown spiritually? Now, what does that mean, spiritually? So they don't know. They want symbols that they can measure. Well, I don't eat in this bakery anymore. I stopped eating at that restaurant. I buy different meat. I buy different
Everything
colors.
Without thought.
No, I could quantify it. I could measure it, you see.
Right.
I have now bigger film.
Right.
So in other words, people like, how do I know I'm happy? So I look at the home I own. And in other ways, and I see what my husband has brought me or what she has done for me. In other words, people want tangible objects to measure what can't be measured.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. And as a result of that, they've given up soul, they've given up authenticity, they've given up the deepest things. And if you look at people, they have nicer homes than they ever had, they get more presents than they ever have, and they're still lonely. Their eyes look lonely. There's no joy in their face because we ultimately can't measure what is immeasurable. And we have to have confidence of inner development and inner character building.
So it's the same thing as a rich man trying to be more profound. He buys a Cadillac, he buys a Rolex, he buys a driver, he buys an airplane.
That's right, he
Inside
measures.
his soul, there's no core value. There's no system of
There's nothing
spirituality.
inner. There's no inner life.
Right.
There's no inner joy. There's no inner reflection. And therefore they can't even be alone with themselves. Sometimes the big test of what type of human being you are is how can you be with yourself?
Absolutely.
And therefore the inability to sit with quiet and to reflect and listen to your own music and your own heartbeat is a crucial thing for being a human being. But we buy busyness. You know, even when Jews go away on holidays, they're busy relaxing. And I remember the guy tell me, I'm busy. I'm not to be busy. I remember rabbis who always, when I would speak to them, how is it going for you? It's busy, all the time, busy. I mean, to say you're not busy is original sin. You know, it's to be guilty. You got to be busy. And therefore, they have no time to read and no time to study. You got to be busy.
True.
Busy. I'm busy. What's your schedule? I don't know. I'm tied up for the next month. You know, let me check my calendar. One minute, I may have 15 minutes. I know someone who comes to Israel. He overbooks his appointments so that he shouldn't be caught a half hour without someone to talk to or someone to distract him.
I know many people like that.
Now,
and
that's
sad.
why Shabbos is such a great day. The Sabbath, there's no television, no radio, there's no telephone. You have to find a way to live with yourself and live with your wife and live with your children. Sing a song, open up a book, say a prayer, and learn the dignity of peace and the dignity of silent achievement. And that's why the great blessing of the Shabbat. And the Shabbat saved the Jewish soul because it taught it. I saw what it did to my father. My father was a customer peddler who was always poor, hardly made a living. Came Shabbos, he was a prince at home. My mother would serve him the fish, the head of the fish, that he should feel he's a successful man. You know, he didn't even know what that meant. And the point is that you need a culture which trains you not only to achievement, but to quiet, to a sense of quiet.
But if you were a Jewish personality and, you know, you wanted to observe Shabbos in a sense, you differentiated that day from every other day. And let's say you love to see football games, you know, but you would not work on that day because your life would be different on that day. That's also, in a sense, it's Judaic. I mean, you want them to say prayer, okay.
No, I would want them to study, and I would want them... In other words, I don't want to say if a person found a way, either through listening to music or that there's individual ways that people may find that gives them a sense of peace and serenity. But I'm also interested in the holy. See, I'm interested in them being brought into something totally different than the ordinary things that they would do every day. A football game could be watched any day of the week. I would want their sense of what I would call leisure to reflect something which is not easily exchangeable.
I know an Orthodox Jew who refuses to go to synagogue on Friday night and Saturday because he finds it a political place or a place where everybody's trying to show that he got more or he did more, that everybody's talking about business deals, that everything is talking about this guy did more than the other guy. It's a contest, and he says, I don't find any religiosity there.
That's correct. I know that. I know that. I mean, I know that fact.
And you know it as a pulpit rabbi,
I know
too.
as a pulpit rabbi, and I remember people used to talk about their stock market.
Right.
So the point is if your mind and your soul doesn't change, if what you speak about doesn't change, then just going to synagogue doesn't make any difference.
No. And the problem is, where I see it, is that these people really walk out and think they've observed the religious a commandment or something, and it's not true. They've done nothing except congregate with other people to discuss things.
This is form without content.
Right.
This is form without substance. And that's easy. That's what people latch onto. And there's no question about it, Leon, that spirituality, holiness, refinement, gentleness, spontaneous joy, those are the qualities that need to be brought into the tradition and brought into a society for it to not to be decadent. In other words, how do you create inwardness? How do you create the ability to sit with, without this bludgeoning of notion of achievement? How much have I grown economically? What have I purchased lately? Where have I gone? I mean, I know many people who come to visit Israel, and they take pictures all over. They never leave the bus, and they're taking pictures and pictures and pictures. And they find out that they were in Israel when they come home. So they look at the movies, and they say, gee, I was there, So, and they need to do that, because if they don't have that picture, then someone will say, you went to Israel, and you didn't see this? So that kills the whole holiday. So I always tell people, never tell them what you experienced here, because they'll always tell you what you could have experienced. So the feeling of being deprived, of not having it all, of feeling that I was gypped, I didn't experience all that could be experienced, is a horrible obsession with people. So they lose everything. Because if you want it all, you have nothing. I remember there was a student of mine who came, parents sent him here to study with me. And he was studying, and he grew, he was a kid, he came out of the 60s. And then he comes to me one day and says, I just got a letter from my friend who's in Greece. And he said he met a guru in Greece that is, a real turn on. So he says, I said, do you feel that you were growing in Jerusalem? He says, yes, I was very happy here until I got that letter. So I says, you know what's going to happen? You're going to go to Greece, and you're going to meet the guru. And then you're going to get a letter from someone who's in Bombay. And he's going to tell you, you haven't seen anything until you've met my guru in Bombay. And wherever you're going to go, there's always going to be someone who's going to write you a letter of what you're missing. And as a result of that, you will never digest anything. You will never internalize everything. Because you'll always feel, how can I enjoy this now when I could be someplace else? This feeling that I could be somewhere else and have something else destroys the joy of what's available to you now. And therefore, to be able to be in one place. Yes, in your shir. What is your? But no one ever knows what their shir is. That's the problem.
But you find it internally.
That's right. And therefore, to be able to be in one place, to be able to be in love with one woman, to be able to find the joy in the partial, in what I have now.
I guess Bill Clinton missed that, didn't he?
I don't know. That you have to ask Bill. I think America's pastime is now talking about Bill Clinton's sex life. I mean, I would say that, there are two things which struck me when I visited America this time. The obsession, this simple little obsession with his whole personal life, which struck me as strange. I thought this was a vicarious form of pornographic films.
You think it is?
I think that the details of it, the detailization of
I think
this.
it was ugly.
The celebrating it, what type of dress does she have? Was it sperm? What type? And this whole focus on that. I'm not talking about, did he act with wisdom?
That's for sure he did.
Clearly he did not.
Right.
He did not appreciate the seriousness of his own role in the world sufficiently. If he would have done that, he would have then would have had this. I mean, this is the most serious man in the world,
right,
in the most serious position in the world.
Right.
And the world needs his leadership because the man has a great deal to offer. I mean, the man has vision, the man has intelligence, the man has charisma. So he should have realized, overcome the immediate gratification, whatever pressures there were in any human being.
Not qualified to.
But you see, in other words, human beings are...
Right, so he met with a bunch of clergy. Did you read about that?
Yes, a prayer breakfast.
Right. And he confessed.
Yes.
And he did contrition.
Yes. So I think...
How much more can you take from a person?
Yeah, I think then the issue becomes, was he truly contrite? It was and rabbis began to write about it. It became a new popular sermon now. Repentance is now a legitimate theme. Clinton made it relevant.
Contrition.
That's contrition, so people are talking about Yom Kippur now. Yom Kippur became a relevant day. The point is this, I hope that he rehabilitates himself. It would be a pity for a man of such great talent to go down in history as a failure.
That's true.
I think it would be a tragedy of the first order. The second thing that struck me in America is, they said to me, we are now living in momentous historical times. And I was saying, what's going on? History is being made. And I thought maybe the Messiah is on his way.
Impeachment.
No!
What?
Are we going to pass the 61 home run thing?
Oh, McGuire.
And this was, they talked about as if a great event was occurring in history. So American sense of the
shows where
drama,
our culture is.
where the culture is, and it struck me as strange. I mean, history is being made, and maybe because history is not being made in a real way, that we have to choose these little baseball games.
Interesting.
You know, to give us a sense of drama.
We got a cut. We'll be back after a break and continue with David Hartman. And the name of your new book is, David?
Make yourself a heart of many rooms.
Make yourself a heart of many rooms. And there's a wide expansion on that title. We'll be right back.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high to have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Get the book that inspired the award-winning movie, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the Backdoor Channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or Audible.com.
Back, I'm Leon Charney speaking with David Hartman. The book about living hearts won't come out until January, but if you're anxious to read some of David's writings, this book just came out, A Living Covenant, The Innovative Spirit in Traditional Judaism. And obviously if David wrote it, it's probably terrific. I've not read it yet, but I'm willing to,
For the next interview.
I'm willing to say it's a great book. David, you're a rabbi, and we have chief rabbis in this country, and it seems to me that, well, let's talk about this Ne'eman Committee. The Ne'eman Committee said that they're going to try and bridge the gap between the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox on this conversion law. Would it be true to say that the Orthodox can, I'm not talking about you, but the Orthodox rabbinate here, could they ever agree to a compromise that's in antithesis of their religious beliefs the way you express them? You understand my question?
No, I think that they could never agree, in light of their understanding,
right,
in light of their interpretation of the tradition, that they can give legitimacy to a conservative Reform rabbi as member of the court, of the Bet Din. But they can, and this is the issue, can they provide room for the participation of conservative and Reform rabbis in the conversion process, meaning the educational process? Can they have an institute for training converts and educating them, in which conservative Reform rabbis could be teachers there? In other words, I felt that part of the need was to make conservative and Reform rabbis feel a degree of dignity. Now, no one is asking the Orthodox to compromise on their normative halachic standards, but to in some way create a condition where people with different ideologies feel that they're mentioned.
Do you think it's possible in this country?
Well, I think it's possible in this country, because everything is possible in this country. This country can move in a great direction, or it could degenerate. I mean, this country is not...
The shekel moved yesterday, like 20%.
I mean, it can move. The society, I haven't given up on the possibility for a spiritual pluralism, for decency, for respect for people with different opinions.
All right, this brings me to my really vital question. The issue that I see being raised more than any other issue, it's not even peace with the Palestinians, is the separation between secularism and religion. And wherever I go, everybody tells me this is really the problem in the country, and ultimately it could lead to a civil war. That's how rough it's getting now. Is that what you find here?
I would say that feeling, that intuition is very felt by many. Although I met someone recently, a philosopher, Avishai Margalit, who felt that to him the major issue is peace with the Palestinians. However, both are very vital issues.
But there's a poll taken on this.
I would say that the issue of the hatred, the visceral hatred for anything to do with religion is growing in the society. At the same time, my experience has taught me that there's a deep hunger in the society for listening to a type of Judaism which gives them a human meaning to their lives, which respects them as human beings, etc., and doesn't preach to them.
Well, that's basically what your institute does.
That's what the institute, in other words, the institute is now having to expand. We are building more in a second phase of our campus construction because the demands are enormous. In other words, I've seen in the society, I've just spoken before 400 educators of the informal education of the country. I taught them Talmud. I taught them about the spirit of Yom Kippur, about forgiveness, about building a society which respects change and which allows people to change. They came to me, they said, can you please speak to our students in our school? We've been waiting to, and I told them my message for Yom Kippur is don't ask kids to bring the report card of the previous year. Because I remember when I was a kid, and I was a very bad student in high school, and then over the summertime, I remember I said to myself, Hartman, this year you're going to be a mensch. This year you're going to finally be a student. So I came into the class, and Mr. Friedman, my math teacher, looked at the Delaney card and said, Hartman, don't think you're going to make trouble with me like you made for all your previous teachers. So I said, I've been already labeled as a person who's a troublemaker. So I said, if you think I'm that, I'm going to help you fulfill your vision of myself. So I said, the best thing you could do for school, your Yom Kippur program, is not to ask kids to bring their report card of last year, because then they are immediately pegged into what they were in the past, and you don't look upon them in a new way. So the teachers looked at me and said, they never heard this message of Yom Kippur. In fact, it's so relevant, what does it have to do with Yom Kippur? In other words, the idea that Judaism could be relevant to human life is something they're not exposed to. So there is a hunger in the land on one level, and there's a hatred on another. The country is looking for its soul. The country would like to feel that it's continuing Jewish history. The secular community is not buying into Club Med. It really wants to feel that it is imbibing the best of the Judaic spirit. But what is who has the key to that spirit? Who reads the books? Who interprets the books? Who gives the message is the big issue. I don't think I have a feeling that Israelis are the most spiritually hungry people I've ever met. I've lectured across America, and I've met with responsive ears. I've never met a more attentive responsiveness than I've met in Israel.
Is that right?
Yes. So I think that
there's a hunger
and a willingness, if you could only talk to me like a human being, and not like I'm a child. No, I always get the question, do you accept me? Do you love me for the way I am, or do you want to change me? I said, I don't want to change you. I want to learn with you. You want to study with me? I'm not out there. What you're going to do with this is going to be your own decision. And to give them an image of a Judaism that speaks in multiple voices, a Judaism that has a heart of many rooms. They're looking for that.
If you speak to political personalities here and you tell them this, response.
They don't understand it.
They don't get it.
They don't get it. I mean,
that's the tragedy, by the way, of the country.
Well, you see, the country should not be measured by its politicians.
No, but they give out the message. That's the problem. Especially in this society. You know, Israel's a society without a constitution. So the Knesset, I had a discussion with a man the other day, a member of Knesset, and I said that Asa Weitzman has a strong power. He's the president of Israel. If he doesn't sign on a bill, it's a pocket veto. So he said, well, if he didn't sign, what we would do is change the law in the Knesset that the speaker would sign the bill. I said, well, once you did that, you're a banana republic. So the nations among nations would not regard you as a state, because you could also pass a law that the Supreme Court would be cut down to 2 people, both wear tzitzis and black hat yarmulkes. So there's no, so what are you telling me? You tell me there's no regard for the law and there's no regard for the Constitution. So the society here is very, very political, and there's no governing body. And if you get into religiosity, you get to the chief rabbis. And that is also a political position, which I think personally is a very dangerous thing. You see campaigning now for chief rabbis in various cities, and to use the term, it's pretty ugly, you know?
It's very ugly.
And when you put politics and religion together...
Well, in this country, if everything became politicized, basketball is politicized, soccer teams is politicized, because there was a socialist government which was paternalistic and control from the top, and therefore if you weren't within the channels of power, you got nothing. In other words, and therefore people then felt that religion has to develop a political cloud if it's to have any influence. My view is that the power of a rabbi is that he has no power. The Macht von a Yid is a hat nicht kein Macht, was Leivik, the poet, said. The power of a rabbi that he can't coerce. The only thing you can do is he can only teach and persuade. Your power is in what you teach, in the content of what you teach, and not in legislation. The Knesset won't bring the soul back to the Jewish people.
You can't legislate morals.
No, you can't legislate soul. You can't legislate spirituality. You can't legislate holiness. You could legislate against evil, against injustices. You could legislate against violence. You could legislate to provide social welfare programs. But you can't legislate to create human character. And religion deals with the building of human character. And that has to come from teachers. It has to come from environments. It has to come from teachers who inspire. And the mistake to think that through the National Religious Party or Aguda Party we're going to guard the tradition is a great tragic error.
Well, I had a discussion with the president of the university, and he said one of the ways to eliminate hate was through teaching and through various schools. But on the other hand, if you have an Ayatollah Khomeini school which teaches Ayatollah Khomeinism to young people, you're going to perpetuate the same people. If you have kids going to these yeshivas that are very right-wing, aren't you perpetuating another group?
Well, the point is this. I think the dangers of freedom is you could always have views in opposition to yourself. There's always the risk of a liberal democratic society. How much room do you have for different opinions? Now, there's a greater danger in closing down the right-wing yeshivot than there is in just having one educational system. Now, I think the danger of one educational system is it becomes totalitarian. So if you want to win against Khomeinism, make sure that you create schools that will create students and create a society which will show the benefits of a non-Khomeini mentality.
We're running out of time. I just want to cover one area with the Shas people, which is a very well-organized Sephardic party, and political and social and educational. The feeling is that they will become the second most important political party. Now, the way they do it is through funding of schools and social programs. Am I correct?
Yes.
And is this good for the society, or?
I don't think it's good. But it's the only way to counteract it is to create a healthy center that will balance the extremes. I don't think we could change the extremes, but we can empower the center. There's an important silent majority that needs to be empowered. By empowering them, I think we can balance the extremes. That's my hope for the future of Israel.
David, that's the last word. As usual, we all thank you very much.